Hi, my name is Kyle Fredrickson, and today I'm going to be presenting our work, Sparta. So, Sparta introduces a new way of thinking about traffic analysis that paves the way for actually achieving traffic analysis resistance in the real world. So, the problem that we're trying to solve with all of this is private messaging over untrusted infrastructure. If we assume that the infrastructure is untrusted, then adversaries sniffing the network will be able to observe everything happening on the network. So, the first line of defense is encryption, which hides the contents of the messages. But in the real world, adversaries also get metadata about communications. And this metadata includes things like the identities of parties, who's talking to who, the timing of messages, and the size of messages. And metadata alone can leak extremely sensitive information. Say you're an undercover agent observed talking to a law enforcement agency. Now your cover's blown. Or say a patient is observed talking to an oncologist. Now we know they have cancer. Or say a whistleblower is seen talking to a journalist. They're now on the short list of potential leakers. So while end-to-end encryption is necessary, it's not sufficient. And this isn't just a theoretical problem. Government agencies have long known the value of metadata, and we even have high-ranking officials saying publicly that with enough metadata, you don't need the contents of messages. But this isn't just a problem for privacy-conscious citizens. If governments can do metadata analysis at scale, it can also be done to them. And in the last few months, it was done to them in the Salt Typhoon breach, which explicitly targeted the metadata of devices in the DC area. So in order to provide real privacy, which is needed in a host of different domains, we have to protect the contents of communications, but we also have to protect the metadata. So today, Tor is the only widely used anonymity system. And the academic literature has made a lot of the fact that Tor is vulnerable to global adversaries. So if you can observe the entire network, then you can just trace messages as they bounce through the Tor network from sender to receiver. But this isn't actually the focus of attacks on Tor. Instead, most focus on much more realistic traffic analysis attacks. Traffic analysis attacks focus on features of the traffic at the users bypassing the system entirely. So if you observe a user send a message and then shortly after another user receives a message, this is evidence that they're communicating. And this is independent of whether the system is secure against global adversaries or even just a fully trusted black box. And because of this, traffic analysis is a potential vulnerability for all anonymity systems. So that attack was an oversimplification, but in reality, traffic analysis attacks have evolved to get better performance in more realistic contexts. And they can leverage features like the timing of messages, timing patterns within traffic streams, the volume of traffic, and repeated connections between communicating users. But the key feature in all of these attacks is correlations in the traffic at the users over time. So what are the solutions to traffic analysis? Well, we could broadcast. There, everyone receives a message, so you only learn when a user sent and nothing about the receiver. But in a large network, you just can't have everyone receive everything because the network overhead is too high. You could also make assumptions like that every honest user will send one message every round for the lifetime of the system. Then, because everyone sent something, you only learn when a user received something and nothing about the sender. This is extremely common in academic works, but this is never going to happen in the real world because even honest users will lose connectivity for any number of reasons and be unable to send their required message. Right? What happens if your phone dies or you get on a plane? You can't send. But more fundamentally, how long is this round? If the round is a millisecond, then the network is still going to be inundated in dummy traffic. And if the round is an hour, then anyone who sends more frequently than an hour on average will have to defer these additional messages. And it turns out that they have unbounded latency as messages kind of pile up in their outbox. So our goal was to answer whether traffic analysis resistance is even possible in practice. And surprisingly, the answer is yes. But first, we need to know what traffic analysis resistance is, because while there are a few formal security definitions for anonymity, none actually capture traffic analysis. So we start by modeling the input to anonymity systems as communication states. A communication state is just a set of tuples where each contains the sender, the receiver, and the time the message was sent. So really, communication states are just directed graphs with additional timing information, where the nodes in these graphs are the users and the edges in the graphs are the messages. And we can express security properties as leakage functions on these communication states. And these leakage functions restrict information that adversaries can learn about the state. So generally, leakages are composed of one function on the sender traffic, like this one, which only contains information about who sent when, but no information about the receiver. and one leakage function on the receiver traffic like this, which captures the volume of messages receivers get, but nothing about the timing or the sender. So a side effect of this framework is that after 40 years of research, we can now formally specify the security of all existing systems and compare them. But more importantly, it allows us to reason about the security of different leakage functions. And what we noticed is that systems that leak timing information for both senders and the receivers were vulnerable to traffic analysis, and systems that don't are not. And intuitively, the difference separating them is that insecure leakages allow correlations between input and output over time, which is actually the feature that attacks leverage. So excluding systems that are vulnerable to traffic analysis, the remaining systems have what we call tier 4 leakages. And these systems are secure, but they have fixed bandwidth rates across all users, leading to high overhead and high latency. But what we notice is that there's an unexplored point here. This leakage enforces independence between the input and the output traffic, preventing traffic analysis, but it also allows the traffic at the senders and the receivers to vary. But unfortunately, no systems can implement it. So now the question is how to achieve that leakage practically. So deferred retrieval is an abstract functionality that systems can implement, and it can be implemented in any model like multi-party computation, fully homomorphic encryption, or using trusted execution environments. The key idea in deferred retrieval is that users set their fetch rates based on estimations of their overall traffic, but to avoid dropping messages, it queues messages in hidden state. So users send messages into the system, then they can fetch their messages whenever they like, as long as this doesn't actually depend on the real volume of traffic that they've received. And this traffic is padded and deferred to match this chosen rate. The result is that compared to prior approaches, we have much more flexible assumptions for traffic analysis resistance, and we can provide it with multiple orders of magnitude lower network costs, even if users don't estimate their preferred rate well. And finally, we have Sparta. So Sparta is an implementation of deferred retrieval using TEEs and oblivious algorithms. So TE-based systems are already deployed at scale at companies like Signal, and in the last few years, there have been huge strides in oblivious algorithms, offering a real path to practicality in the near future. So we implemented 3 different variants of this functionality that we collectively call Sparta. 1 that targets low latency applications, and 2 that target high throughput applications. So sort-based Sparta implements deferred retrieval using a sort, a linear scan, and 2 compactions, and is optimized for high throughput. And it can process 700,000 100-byte messages per second for a throughput that's 15x higher when running on a single machine than the prior state-of-the-art running on 150. And since we submitted Sparta, new primitives have been developed that we could drop in to immediately improve throughput by between 10 and 100x. So we're extremely excited about Sparta and the direction of research that it opens. And with that, I'll conclude. For more details, please check out our paper Sparta, and send me an email if you have any questions.